This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy to see if you could save when you bundle your home and auto policies. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Good afternoon. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. We get right down to business here with the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks finishing mostly higher today. Investors trying to shake off new concerns about rising geopolitical tensions, especially involving Russia and Ukraine today. The Russian leader Vladimir Putin today signed a revised nuclear doctrine declaring that a conventional attack on Russia by any nation that is supported by a nuclear power will be considered a joint attack on Russia. This follows President Biden's weekend decision to allow Ukraine to use long-range missiles made by the United States to strike deep into Russian territory. It looks like Ukraine wasted no time and went ahead to attack Russian targets with the missiles. Ukrainian news outlets reported today that the missiles had been used to attack a Russian military facility in the Bryansk border region. Russia then confirmed the attack, with the Russian Ministry of Defense stating that Ukrainian forces had struck a facility in that region using 6 ballistic American-made ATACMS missiles. The ministry claimed air defense systems had shot down 5 of the missiles and damaged another. Global markets, of course, paying attention to all these developments, not only involving Russia and Ukraine, but also we see Germany's defense minister today saying they have to assume damage to 2 data cables under the Baltic Sea, one of which ends in Germany, was caused by sabotage. Though he said that they have no proof at present, damage was detected to the Sea Lion 1 cable that runs between Helsinki, Finland, and the German port city of Rostock, and another cable between Lithuania and Sweden was also damaged. Elsewhere, North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, renewing his call for a limitless expansion of his military's nuclear program to counter U.S.-led threats. Comments are reported there today, his first direct criticism toward Washington since President Trump's win in the presidential election. Also, Israel's prime minister says it hit part of Iran's nuclear program last month, despite pleas from the U.S. not to do so during the strikes it carried out in response to an Iran missile attack on Israel. The Dow coming in for a closing loss today of 121 points. The S&P 500 higher by 23, and the Nasdaq Composite gained nearly 200 points. Shares of Netflix moving higher today, hitting record highs. The record close coming as Netflix announced that the marquee live boxing event featuring YouTuber Jake Paul and former heavyweight champ Mike Tyson had 108 million global viewers. Trump Media and Technology Group, DJT stock, moving lower today after a big rally in the previous session for the parent company of President-elect Trump's Truth social media platform. Stock dropping today after rising on the heels of a report that Trump Media was near a deal to buy Bakkt Holdings, a cryptocurrency-centered company. Bitcoin, meanwhile, hitting all-time highs above 94,000 today. Yep, you heard me, above 94K. The same day as options on BlackRock's popular iShares Bitcoin Trust Exchange made a debut on the NASDAQ today. Oil futures settling a bit higher as traders track developments in the Russia-Ukraine war. SpaceX launching Starship today. Cheers in Hawthorne, right here in Southern California. The most powerful rocket ever built was launched on its 6th test flight from South Texas. The rocket making a safe landing and stayed intact as it splashed down in the Indian Ocean. SpaceX also opted to land the ship's Super Heavy booster in the Gulf of Mexico rather than on land. Los Angeles business leaders are rallying in opposition to an aggressive minimum wage hike being considered by the Los Angeles City Council tomorrow. Local business leaders already tremendously under pressure because of inflation and skyrocketing operating costs. Many small businesses fear they'll be squeezed out of business if the City Council votes to approve that measure. I'll discuss what's at stake later this hour with Maria Salinas, the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. She'll be joining us live later this hour. Meanwhile, California ranks 30th for business climate. I'll talk about that with veteran business journalist Jonathan Lansner, who will be joining me live from the Orange County Register. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works now. Joining us live, Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel Wisdom, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. There's certainly some early warning signs that it's going to be a volatile 2025. That may be one of the big themes, plus the longer-term interest rates hanging higher for longer, and then, of course, tariffs and expectations for some expansionary fiscal policies, which might lend some upside risk to interest rates. Clearly, the Federal Reserve is going to wait until fiscal policy is more clear once the inauguration is past us, which is going to garner more attention than monetary policy. It's going to be all Fed policy. That's another of our forecast for 2025. And finally, it appears that aerospace and defense ought to benefit from some of the potential increases in spending that'll be driven by these geopolitical tensions that you mentioned. On balance, looking ahead 6 to 12 months, which is what we try to do, it appears to be a pretty good 2025 with a combination of pro-growth deregulation and public spending that ought to offset the higher tariffs and geopolitical uncertainty.
On the air live with money manager Gabriel Wisdom at American Money Management, which is based here in Southern California. Of course, we're also keeping track of the candidates vying to be President-elect Donald Trump's in the cabinet, especially Treasury Secretary. He's not yet announced it. Today he announced that he was nominating Howard Lutnick to lead the Commerce Department. Howard Lutnick's name was mentioned as a possible Treasury Secretary. The Cantor Fitzgerald CEO has led and been the public face of the Trump transition team. So Howard Lutnick will be the U.S. Commerce Secretary. And among the candidates now in contention for Treasury Secretary, which is obviously a critical role at this critical moment, Kevin Warsh's name has popped up, former Fed governor turned Fed critic. And according to the betting markets, looks like he's increasingly viewed as the most likely now to become President-elect Trump's Treasury nominee. Scott Bessent, another name, the CEO of Key Square Capital Management, a hedge fund, also mentioned, and also John Paulson, a billionaire hedge fund manager who gained the world's attention and $4 billion in fortune when he bet against the housing market during the subprime mortgage crisis of 2007 when we were on the air back in those days, Gabriel Wisdom. And Robert Lighthizer, another name mentioned as possible Treasury Secretary. He served as the U.S. Trade Representative in President Trump's first administration. Any thoughts on this important job here, Treasury Secretary, and who do you think might get that job?
Well, you know, Frank, this is a very impressive list of qualified candidates for that very important position. And it might explain President-elect Trump's interest in maybe using Senate recess appointment procedures to push some of these cabinet members through without a Senate confirmation. And there is precedence for this. More recently, President Obama made 32 recess appointments to full-time positions. And George W. Bush also, he made some 99 of these appointments, and Clinton made, as I understand it, about the same number. So the Supreme Court has ruled on the constitutional limits of recess appointments, but it's pretty clear that President Trump's going to get what he wants.
And President Trump picking well-known names. Remember when President Reagan, coming off the inflation we saw back in those days coming out of the Carter administration, President Reagan named Donald T. Regan the Treasury Secretary who headed up Merrill Lynch back in those days. That's
right. And that was a great appointment and a terrific era. And let's hope that that's what we'll see in 2025. But these gentlemen that have been mentioned are all good.
On the air live with Gabriel Wisdom, and it's hard to ignore Bitcoin popping above 94,000. Again, we speak to the biggest fans of crypto here, as well as the harshest critics. It's got a lot more fans lately with Bitcoin above 94K and all kinds of wild predictions as to where it goes from here. And we have this new investment vehicle out today. Gabriel, what are your thoughts about crypto and Bitcoin in particular?
Well, you know, Frank, I've been slow to to recognize Bitcoin as a legitimate, let's call it a currency. Although it's an asset. But in looking at Bitcoin's total market capitalization, the value of all the Bitcoin out there, and they call it digital gold. If you compare it with the market cap or the value of all the above ground gold, which is between 10 and 11 trillion dollars, Bitcoin is trading at a huge discount to gold. Now, it doesn't have the wide adoption of gold, but if the world were suddenly to agree that Bitcoin is digital gold, you could see the price rise some 8 times from here. And so that gets my attention. What gold and Bitcoin have in common is a finite supply, and also that mining continues to be more difficult for both Bitcoin and gold.
That is very interesting. I had not seen that comparison or that analysis. Where can we find that, what you just mentioned there?
If you just Google or search for a Bitcoin market cap versus gold, you'll see a number of articles on this. The World Gold Council is also another good source. They've estimated around 57,000 tons of gold in the world, but a lot of it is practically impossible to extract. It's undersea, it's beneath mountains, it's uneconomical to mine at its current price, and kind of similar to Bitcoin in the sense that it's getting very expensive to mine and takes a lot of energy and not so easy to find them.
All right, from digital gold, so-called, to analog gold, good old gold on the rebound again this week, above 2,600. What about gold here?
Well, I like it. It's all about supply and demand. I've said before that there's just so little of it that you can get your hands on, and that's why the price has been going up. All the gold that's ever been mined in 5,000 plus years is still around. And now we use gold in smartphones, smart devices. It's become an industrial metal as well. So if the World Gold Council is correct, they're estimating that miners have extracted about 200,000 tons of gold. There's not much left in the underground reserves, not really. So I like it.
All right, getting back to the market here, we see a mixed finish today with the Dow pulling back. NVIDIA having a good day today, up nearly $7 at 147. NVIDIA now part of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. What about NVIDIA and the Mag 7 names here now?
Well, they've had a terrific few years, no question about it. They fell very, very hard in 2020. 2021 wasn't so glorious. 22 was difficult, but from that point onward, they've led the broad market much higher. NVIDIA's major product is the graphic processing unit, the GPUs, and they're made with palladium, they're made with copper, cobalt, of course, silicon. But this whole AI theme is going to need more of these things. Microsoft, for example, put up a $500 million data center in Chicago, and that required almost 2,200 tons of copper, for example. So, and power is going nuclear. I think NVIDIA has a terrific future, but it's certainly not cheap here.
And tomorrow earnings will be coming out. You think they're going to knock it out of the park again? And where do you think the stock goes from here?
Well, I think the demand still exceeds supply for NVIDIA. They can't keep up with demand. Pretty much every single company wants their chips. Certainly if they're doing any kind of artificial intelligence build out. The capital equipment spending has been surging. For example, energy equipment maker GE Vernova, which was spun off from GE, they're expecting about $6.5 billion in backlogs of gas turbines that are needed for the backup generators and other electrical equipment to continue to grow, maybe even triple by the end of next year. NVIDIA plays a role in this.
Speaking of spinning off, we have some breaking news here, Gabriel Wisdom, via the Wall Street Journal, which says Comcast stock is up in after-hours trading this afternoon after the Wall Street Journal reported the company is expected to announce a plan to spin off most of its cable TV networks. According to the Wall Street Journal, and this is just coming across the wires here now, cable networks under Comcast NBC Universal umbrella include MSNBC, CNBC, USA, Oxygen E, Sci-Fi, and the Golf Channel will separate in a tax-free spinoff. This according to a report in the Wall Street Journal. Comcast shares moving higher here on that news. Any initial reaction to that breaking news here this afternoon?
Yes, I like spinoffs in particular after they fall. Joel Greenblatt, a noted market historian out of New York, wrote a book about spinoffs some years ago, and what he says is still true today. There are few, if any, analysts following the new spun-off company, and so they fall. There's not much demand, and then they become very, very attractive. So I'd watch for Comcast's spinoff. Additionally, I think industrial companies of all kinds will probably benefit from this moving manufacturing back to American soil, assuming tariffs are not too, onerous. I think that's going to be very beneficial.
Of course, Elon Musk back in the spotlight today, along with President-elect Trump today with that rocket launch. And I don't know if you saw the front page of the Financial Times over the weekend. Headline, Musk's wealth to hit new heights as deals fire up SpaceX and XAI. The front page article said two of Elon Musk's private companies are set to secure multi-billion-dollar jumps in valuations as investors race to back the sprawling business interests of the world's richest man. SpaceX is preparing to launch a tender offer in December to sell existing shares at about $135 each, I believe it was the number here, according to people with knowledge of the discussions. And similarly, the AI startup also set to raise money. That's going to be big news once those companies go public, right? What's your reaction to that front page news?
There's no question about it, Frank, and there's a multiplier effect when companies go public. There's a lot of money spread around. A lot of taxes are paid as investors take profits. And then we've got this new Department of Government Efficiency that Elon Musk will be a major player in, and hopefully you can find a way for Americans to afford to buy a home again. 80% of Americans, latest survey I saw anyway, think it's a bad time to buy a house. This came from Fannie Mae. And, the interest rates have dropped in the short run, but they've gone up on the long end, which is making it more difficult. So it's all good news when we see companies go public, money gets circulated, taxes get paid, and maybe housing will be next because it's still suffering.
All right, last but not least, any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, there's geopolitical tensions that keep going forward. We're in the 1,000th day now of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. I'm looking at Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin has been making a lot of strategic moves by partnering with Meta, with Amazon, with Microsoft for defense AI initiatives. They've got a lot of free cash flow. The stock is LMT, Lima Mike Tango, on the New York, and it trades at about 20 times earnings. You compare that to the other big defense AI play, Palantir, which is trading at some 300 times earnings. Similar business, more rapid growth, but I think Lockheed Martin is worth a look here.
Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And out to the freeways we go now, 790 KBC. 790 KBC welcomes the one and only Stevie Wonder coming to the Crypto.com Arena December 14th. Tickets are on sale Friday at noon at AXS.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. You'll be overjoyed to get a pair of tickets to the show if you are caller number 9. Call right now, 1-888-795-2222. Tickets furnished by Golden Voice. Mixed finish to the day on Wall Street. The Dow pulling back 121 points at 43,269. The S&P 500 of 23 at 5,917. The NASDAQ gained 196 at 18,987. Taking a look at the breaking news here, Comcast shares moving higher in after-hours trading. On a report in the Wall Street Journal, it says Comcast is expected to announce a plan to spin off most of its cable TV networks, including MSNBC, CNBC, USA, Oxygen E, as well as the Golf Channel and Sci-Fi. The Journal reports they'll separate in a tax-free spin-off. Those networks generated about $7 billion in revenue, according to the last reporting period. Gold moving higher today at $2,635 and change. Crude oil on the rise once again, above $69 a barrel in New York and above $73 a barrel in London. Big day for cryptos today. Let's bring up the latest here now on how Bitcoin performed, hitting a record high above 94,000 today. In case you missed that big news, we see Bitcoin continues to set records this year and this day, as a matter of fact. Right now pulling back to 92,221. Ethereum is higher by about 3 at 3,099, and Doge at the moment at 38 cents. And now the latest news for you here in 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Standing tall for small business here. Los Angeles business leaders rallying in opposition to an aggressive minimum wage hike being considered by the Los Angeles City Council tomorrow. Local businesses are already under tremendous pressure because of inflation and skyrocketing operating costs. Many small businesses fear they'll be squeezed out of business now if the City Council votes to approve that measure tomorrow. And joining us live now is Maria Salinas, the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce, who led an important news conference on this issue. Maria Salinas, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Frank.
Tell us what's at stake, and tell us what you announced at that news conference along with the other business leaders here in the area.
Yes, the business conference that we had, the press conference that we had yesterday, was really to urge our council members to take a close look at what they're voting on tomorrow in council. What's before them is a proposed living wage ordinance that would essentially increase costs in labor for about 40%. We know that many in the tourism sector, the hotels, the airlines have already have been abiding by a living wage ordinance and doing the increases that are required of them to do so. But in this particular case, we would be looking at a 40% increase to labor costs to that targeted industry sector. And what we know is that there are many small businesses, there are small hotels, there are small restaurants, there's many concessionaires that are just small organizations that don't have the capacity to take on that additional cost. And they're already operating at a razor-thin margin, and we know that many will close their doors. It'll result in them having to make decisions about the jobs that they have there for their workers today, either by having to reduce hours or just reduce services that will result in closing up particular segments of their work.
In dollars and cents terms, they're talking about raising the minimum wage, to $30 an hour by 2028, up to $25 by next year. Is that right? What are some of the other practical impacts if this does go through tomorrow?
That's exactly right. That, bottom line is that increase that is being proposed is significant. There are other proposals that will increase healthcare costs as well. I think when you look at the entire labor costs that small businesses, that many of these large businesses as well will have to absorb, it will either lead to, additional costs for going through to the consumers, or definitely of shutting down of services, like I mentioned. I think it's one of the things that is at stake here is a lot of the small businesses that we know are fueling this economy, that they're the jobs that are growing. And when we keep burdening these small businesses, especially many that are, still struggling to get out of the pandemic and get back to normal operations, we are not seeing that just yet where, things are back to normal for them.
And you led the group yesterday. It certainly has motivated all the business groups here, LA BizFed and the Valley business groups, right? Tell us who is in opposition to this proposal. Tell us more about that.
Yes. The coalition, the Chamber has led a coalition called the Alliance for Economic Fairness, which is a broad coalition including several business organizations, civic organizations, community leaders from across the Los Angeles area. Yesterday, we heard from Claire Rizzoli, who is a small business restaurateur who had to close down her business just because of the inflationary pressures and the additional costs. We heard from Ray Patel, who has a small hotel in Eagle Rock and understands that he's going to have to cut services and lay off workers if this were to go through. So I think hearing from these small businesses, hearing from organizations like the Latino Chamber of Commerce and hearing how their members are really struggling right now and with the current cost structure and to have to add this on top of it, it just really raises a lot of concern for, it's not just the business community. It's just, when we think about working families and losing out on jobs, that's a very important thing for us to be concerned about.
What kind of reception are you getting? What kind of reaction are you getting from the city council members and the mayor to the opposition from the business community to this proposal they'll be voting on tomorrow?
Well, I can tell you that I've spent plenty of time speaking with council members. I know that they're all very much studying this and looking at this. I think they understand that there are cost pressures for some of their small business community members. They've been hearing from members within their own communities, and we just hope that they are really looking at all the data. When the economic study was prepared to evaluate this, one of the things that study did not do was to evaluate the hotel occupancy tax, something that's referred to as TOT, and that's an important revenue stream for the city itself. So not having that data and voting on something that could put their own revenue in jeopardy is something that we've been highlighting in every meeting that we've had. I think council members understand that, and we hope they will do the right thing by really evaluating this proposed ordinance, living wage ordinance, and bring it into the context of where we're at today and really understand what can be done to make that better so that it works for employers, it works for workers, and it works for the city of Los Angeles as well.
Great to see all the business groups getting together on this. For anyone, any small business out there that wants to connect with you or join this effort on this matter and other matters, what would be the best way to connect with the Chamber on this and other matters?
Well, the best way to connect with the Chamber is through our website, lachamber.com. You can reach any of our team members and myself, actually, through our website. I strongly would encourage any business owner who needs information on this to reach out to us or to many of the other business organizations that work here in Los Angeles, just to stay connected and in tune with some of the policy that is coming through on the city council, because it's definitely going to have an impact, increasing of costs, loss of jobs, and we want to make sure that we have good, strong economy here that can help support many of the great things that are going to be coming to Los Angeles over the next couple of years.
Very exciting things happening. Maria, thank you very much for your leadership and for joining us live here this afternoon at this critical moment. I know you're also very active on social media, including LinkedIn, the professional social networking site. I did catch your latest posting. Maria Salinas, President and CEO of the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Chamber of Commerce weather out there now here in Southern California. Let's get the latest on your ride now. 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Well, now with the U.S. debt at more than $35 trillion and climbing, not to mention the Biden administration still getting us involved in costly wars, developing the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, and inflation still spiraling, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement in the market and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and yes, silver too. Give Joe Morgan a call now at 1-800-753-8534. Mention Frank Mottek, and you could get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now, 1-800-753-8534, or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Weather looking great, but the business climate not looking so good for California. In fact, the latest report shows California ranks 30th for business climate. Let's bring in veteran business journalist now, Jonathan LANSNER at the Orange County Register. Jonathan, thanks for taking the call here, and take it from the top and tell us about that latest report.
Well, I decided to look at sort of the California business world from a business view. I looked at 8 different metrics of let's say, business performance, and have to be honest, some of them are very sort of from conservative groups, so sort of from the C-suite view, so to speak. And when I added it all up, California ranked number 30, which isn't terribly surprising to me because there's certainly a lot of people who are executives and business leaders who are not big fans of, let's politely say, California's pro-worker, pro-consumer thinking when it comes to rules and regulations. So, that is a challenge for businesses. And obviously that feeds probably down to workers when their bosses feel stressed. They do various things from not grow as fast, not have as many raises, to, as we well know, some of them pick up and leave. My math showed, I'm sure your listeners want to know what were the best states by my ranking. Utah was number 1, Florida number 2, then came North Carolina, Texas, and Arizona. Again, 5 states, if people paid attention. I said, where's good places for businesses? Those 5 would probably show up on the list. So pretty much confirming with numbers, perhaps people's suspicions of where at least the business leaders would like to do business. And it raises a question that our state leaders have to deal with. Is that okay? And gosh, it is a grand question. I should say a few months ago, I did a similar type of research, a little bit on the pro-worker side, pro-consumer side, and California finished 3rd. Again, that doesn't surprise me either when you think about what explains what some people think is an anti-business view, which is that California, when it makes its rules and regulations, leans towards, a more progressive view, so to speak, of thinking of, at least in the big picture, the consumer, the worker before the boss. So, we could debate this somewhat forever, but it's, one of those fascinating ebbs and flows, red state, blue state, whatever you want to call it, that to some degree our nation's founders in some odd way thought of. They thought about the states at that time as grand experiments, and now we have 50 of them, and they all do their own and different thing. And I guess life would be boring if all 50 states were exactly the same, or we had one sort of grand national, status and rules and regulations.
Well, you're right to point out red, blue, but we get to talk about green here, the money part of it and the business part of it. And certainly during the 30-plus years that I've been here, it's been an uphill fight for businesses getting Sacramento and certainly Los Angeles to be more business-friendly. Having attended many of the business awards over the years, I don't think L.A. has ever won the most business-friendly award. The other cities within Los Angeles County frequently pick up those honors, but it's been an uphill fight. Now with this recent election, Jonathan LANSNER, I know you paid attention to what's happened recently here in California with the leadership and the politics appear to be changing here. What are the prospects for making California more business-friendly?
That's a grand question. Like you said, over 30 years, I've been here almost 40. There's decidedly, particularly the last, let's say 20 or so, decidedly, again, pro-worker, pro-consumer view. Certainly there is certain hints from all the way from the White House down to some local elections and certainly some of the statewide propositions that the state may be feeling a little bit more conservative this cycle than they have in the past. But until I think you have real change, whether it's a governor from the other side of the aisle or at least the loss of supermajorities in the Sacramento legislatures, I don't think you're going to see any grand dramatic change. And to be fair to those who have those progressive views, in the nation, California still has the most people. It has the most employers. It has the most jobs. It has the largest GDP. So from their view, I'm not saying right or wrong, they would say, where's the problem? And also in a world that is, still very sort of employee-driven, meaning it takes a lot of smarts to be successful in a very competitive world. Being pro-worker may have some advantages that aren't talked about, but I would never expect bosses to applaud anything but having the easiest way, regulatory or rules-wise, to do business. So I think some of it is perhaps that natural ebb and flow, which plays out every week, it seems, in California.
Certainly a long list of issues, which probably put California 30th on your list there, but certainly workforce housing has got to be one, with real estate prices still at or near all-time highs. People having difficulty just affording the rent here, and certainly for businesses trying to attract people here, that's got to be one of the biggest issues now, right?
Oh, certainly. I mean, the stat that sticks out the most to me that no one talks about, which I repeat once or twice a year and usually get people telling me I'm crazy, is California. This whole thing about the California exodus has taken the focus off the real problem. California is by far the worst state when it comes to attracting people from other states. That's the share of our residents who came from other states is shockingly low, worst in the nation. And that hurts certainly the business community because, they want the best and the brightest. And a lot of people would come here, but then they look at, for example, the prices and they can't afford it, or they'll ask for a salary and the boss will say, you must be kidding me. So until we get the housing picture somewhere near sanity, I think it is going to be a hard, sell for bosses.
Yeah, Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us live on that. That is veteran business journalist Jonathan LANSNER from the Orange County Register live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. And we'll be doing more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here, Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
Best-selling author and business growth expert Candy Valentino brings her unique spin on achieving financial freedom.
More than 70% of people feel some sense of imposter syndrome in their life. So that when feelings of fraudulency arise, remind yourself of who you are. Make sure that you recognize and celebrate small milestones. Practicing this will really shift your focus from seeking perfectionism to really acknowledging progress.
The Candy Valentino Podcast, wherever you listen.